I think this is the best YouTube Shorts history channel. Knowledgia has just been blowing up recently. Why Germany was so effective in World War II. Now, I've actually done a video just like this on my Drew IRL channel. It's a bit more of a personal place. I actually just talked about my experiences in the new game Civilization 7 over there. But there's many ways you can tackle this question. So I'm curious how they're going to do this. Because this is how big they got. Wow, what a beautiful map. They're doing a good job already. I mean, they managed to get this big all within like 2-3 years.
Following World War I, Germany was reduced to a ghost of its former self due to hyperinflation and economic collapse.
Of the
However,
Rhineland.
Germany rebuilt its military power starting in 1933. Due to the
1933, also when a certain mustache man was put into power.
Passivity of France and Britain, Germany reoccupied the Rhineland and seized countries like Austria and Czechoslovakia, obtaining resources without engaging.
Did that without any war, which we look at that in hindsight and we're like, yeah, I mean,
the Allies didn't attack Germany from the west while Poland was conquered.
Yep, and this is another big factor. The beginning 6 months of the war was called the Phony War. People didn't really want to get into another giant world war. Actually, it was the first 8 months of the war. I don't even know if I really blame them because they all still remembered the horrors of World War I. But yeah, a lot of people theorize that if France just attacked while the Germans were focused on Poland, they could have dealt a massive blow.
Then, Germany secured the northern and western flank and attacked the
lowlands.
USSR by employing the Blitzkrieg strategy, which placed an emphasis on speed, surprise, and coordination. They were at the gates of Moscow by 1941. And the combination of non-involvement of the Allies, military prowess, clever strategy.
And remember, they were the only ones doing this in the beginning. The Brits and the French were still focused on like World War I tactics. They were not prepared for how much war had evolved since the early 1900s.
And element of surprise contributed to their early success.
Yes,
subscribe,
everything was
join,
just
and
so
click all links
fast.
below.
Instead of tanks moving at the pace of a walking soldier, it was the soldiers moving at the pace of the tanks. And that's really the biggest difference. I mean, damn. Can you blame them? No wonder they weren't really prepared for all this. The Allies really fumbled the bag early on. I mean, of course, this is going to be a thing. We only have 60 seconds to work with for YouTube Shorts. But these videos are really just supposed to spark people's interests to want to dive even deeper themselves. Why wasn't Portugal conquered by Spain? It's always a fun question to ask. Love that Portugal managed to just survive for as long as they did. And not only survive, but honestly flourish. Look how big they got. So one thing's for sure is there was briefly an Iberian Union. I'm sure we're going to get into that.
As an independent entity early on, establishing the country of Portugal in the 9th century. By 1143, it was recognized as a kingdom, as kingdoms of Leon and Castile united.
It's just a very interesting story because as you can see from this map right here, Castile, which ended up becoming Spain, would end up getting Granada, Aragon, and Navarra, but never Portugal. You just kind of think they would have been able to do that.
They then formed a personal union with Aragon, slowly shaping
the Iberian wedding.
Spain. The Kingdom of Portugal remained one entity and developed differently.
It probably helped that Portugal was for sure kind of on the corner of the continental European continent, whatever. Here's a big one. One of the oldest alliances in the books, Portugal and England.
Strategic alliance with England in 1373.
1373, and they still went to war on England's side in World War I, like 600 years later. I literally cannot help but think of this Harry Potter meme whenever I think of these two and their friendship. Also, England had a pretty good reason to support Portugal. They did not want Spain to get massive and control all of the Iberian Peninsula. Remember that they were pretty big rivals for a long time, especially in America and colonization during the Age of Exploration.
1373, which provided military support against Spanish aggression. Portugal consistently resisted Spanish invasions. After a succession crisis, they became part of a union under Spain for 60 years. But even then,
it wasn't really that brief, I guess. 60 years from 1580 to 1640. That, as you can see, was a deadly combination of two nations at the time.
And Portugal revolted and restored its independence in 1640. Later invasions, such as in 1762, were also repelled. Besides that, Spain prioritized overseas colonization over European conquests, and this diverted attention and resources from conquering Portugal.
Yeah, by the time 1700s rolled around, Portugal was relatively safe. Then, of course, when Napoleon starts rolling over Spain, Spain never really recovers from that. The Peninsular Wars were particularly deadly for this country here. So yeah, for Portugal to have actually fallen, they would have needed to fall like 4 centuries or 5 centuries ago. I mean, that just would have been a lot easier that way. Or maybe this is the real reason why the universe just couldn't allow this to happen. World Cup wouldn't even be entertaining anymore. Literally, everyone's just making soccer references. Again, the video is only 60 seconds, so we can't go over literally everything, but that's why I really like to watch these videos, so I can go a little bit deeper and maybe add a little bit of extra details. Why couldn't the Romans conquer Scotland?
First, Rome struggled a lot to conquer this land, primarily due to resilient native resistance.
They ended up just building a wall instead. They were just like, man, those Brits, just keep them out of the empire.
Governor
love the
Gnaeus
memes
Julius
about this.
Agricola achieved notable advances in the 80s AD, but Emperor Domitian recalled him, possibly to prevent being overshadowed.
I mean, the Highlands is a pretty big factor. He'll probably get into it, but just look at the geography of this region. This is not going to be fun to conquer. And then not to mention its far proximity from the Italian peninsula. It's going to be a little bit harder to command everything up here.
During these campaigns, the Romans faced guerrilla warfare and resource limitations, making permanent conquest challenging. Emperor Septimus Severus attempted renewed invasions in the early 200s AD, but his campaign faltered due to heavy casualties and his death in 211 AD.
Jeez.
Ultimately, the rugged terrain, relentless resistance of the natives, and the minimal economic incentive led the Romans to abandon further conquest in the island of Britannia. The costs outweighed the benefits, making Caledonia an impractical conquest.
Which, funny enough, I mean, that's kind of the same reason why many places don't attack the Swiss. They also have just treacherous geography, and yeah, I mean, at least in the case of the No-No Germans, they were like, this isn't even worth it. And that's kind of what they're counting on. They want it to not be worth it. Minimal economic incentive is a great phrase. Really good way to just say, there ain't shit up there. I appreciate these maps that show the mountains. I always thought the main island didn't have mountains, and it made no sense. Yeah, that is really the big difference here. That's what separates these videos from so many, because I mean that stuff plays a major role.
How did America take half of Mexico from Mexico? Approximately 25% of today's United States
comes from just this corner. Texas, Colorado, California.
Mexico struggled with economic problems and internal revolts.
That's kind of a weird cut right there.
After their independence, Mexico struggled with economic problems and internal revolts. After Texas declared independence in 1836 and was annexed by the U.S. in 1845, tensions escalated between the two countries.
The other Texas claim, remember how weird the Texas border actually, or their claims were. In fact, sometimes the Texans to this day still claim all this stuff, getting large chunks of New Mexico, Kansas, Oklahoma, stretching straight through Colorado, and even get a piece of Wyoming. I don't really know why Texas would really want all this, but
President James K. Polk sought to acquire California and the disputed territory of Texas.
And Polk had a very, I think maybe he'll talk about it, but Polk could have gotten even more. There were other proposals to take more from Mexico.
Were moved into disputed territories, and that led to a war between 1846 to 1848. After winning important battles and capturing Mexico City, the U.S.
Yep, I mean, unfortunately for Mexico, you blockade their port Veracruz in the Atlantic Ocean, and they're pretty much done. It is their biggest choke point.
The U.S. won the war. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ended the conflict. Mexico ceded vast territories. Present-day California, Nevada,
eventually
Utah,
getting this piece. They didn't get this piece like instantly.
Arizona, New Mexico, and parts of Colorado and Wyoming to the U.S. in exchange for $15 million.
I'm glad that they added that. We did pay them. Probably wasn't that much. It's probably just like, yo, we just took 25% of your land. Like, we feel bad. Here, take like $10 or something. But it is a factor. How did America take so much land from Mexico? Long story short, by war. Yeah. However, there is something known as the Polk Proposal. This is how he would have wanted it. Taking all the Baja Peninsula, all the Mexican northern states, even this part of the Yucatan Peninsula, and then eventually grabbing Cuba. I mean, U.S. has always wanted Cuba. This certainly would have had insane repercussions. Why wasn't Japan colonized? Portugal,
First, its
Spain.
remote location.
This is an interesting map. I like that representation of Japan being divided down the middle like that, because this is something I often think about could have happened to Japan after World War II if things didn't go the way they did in our timeline. I mean, I don't think it's really that far-fetched. Just imagine the Korean Peninsula, but on the Japanese islands. Of course, that would have meant the entire Korean Peninsula would be communist. I think this would have been the logical next step for Stalin after he declared war on the Japanese.
First, its remote location made colonization difficult and costly for European powers. Secondly, by the time Europeans arrived, Japan was militarily strong.
They were very lucky to not only be on an island, which gives you a big bonus, just ask the British, but they were also located as far away from the Europeans as possible, which gave them a good amount of time to, like, prepare, I guess.
Civil wars. Economically, Japan's trade relationships provided necessary goods without colonization incentives, and their limited natural resources further reduced European interest. European powers were also preoccupied with conflicts among themselves and with establishing colonies elsewhere.
And again, like I said, like I just mentioned, they were just far away. That helps.
Japan's leaders actively resisted foreign influence by implementing isolationist policies to control trade and to limit Christian evangelization. By the late
until
19th century, Japan
US
itself
came
became a
knocking,
colonial
forced them
power,
to open the
further
borders.
solidifying its position and making colonization impractical.
Yeah, they were going to follow that European strategy, start their own empire. That wasn't going to go for them because World War II would happen and yada yada. Forgotten to mention that the fire guns were brought to Japan by Portugal, the first Europeans to arrive by Japan and make commercial relationships. But the Japanese eventually kicked out the Portuguese and only traded with the Netherlands for a while. Literally, Mongolia themselves knows, don't waste your time, guys. I tried. I always love discussing why certain countries were never colonized by the Europeans. Every place has a very, very interesting backstory.
Why is Belgium a country?
Oh boy, beats me. Been asking that question for all my life. No,
In the
I'm just kidding.
16th
But
century, this territory became
yes.
a part of the Spanish Netherlands under
Habsburgs.
Habsburg rule. After the 80-year
Belgium is a rather interesting Frankenstein nation with a very interesting origin story.
War, the Dutch Republic was recognized, while the rest of the Netherlands remained under Spain and then under Austria. Following the Napoleonic Wars, the
Grabbing all
Congress
that.
of Vienna united today's Belgium with the Netherlands.
Big, thick
However,
Netherlands.
dissatisfaction with Dutch rule led to the Belgian Revolution of 1830, sparked by discontent with Dutch King William I's reign, particularly among Catholics and liberals. Grievances included religious suppression, economic disparities, and political oppression. After
Nothing with the language,
protests,
though.
rebellions, and military confrontations,
part of Belgium
the
speaks
Kingdom of Belgium declared independence,
Dutch.
and other European countries recognized the new country in 1831, with
Probably-
Leopold I as
Probably is beneficial for the other European powers to keep the Dutch Empire smaller at that time because they were doing pretty good for their size, I would like to remind you.
its first king.
Belgium is there so that Germany can enter into France, except 1870. They have been called Europe's speed bump. Someone other than those Swiss need to make the chocolate. Never ask a man his salary, a woman her age, or the Belgians what Leopold II did, specifically in the Congo.
Why
did
did
Romania switch sides in World War II?
War-
This has been a popular meme as of recently. I feel like the answer is not really as complicated as people might think.
First, by 1944, Germany was in retreat
So
on multiple
Romania started
fronts,
on the
and
Axis
Romania
side.
faced a Soviet invasion. King Michael I, alongside his conspirators, arrested Prime Minister Marshal Ion
King Michael,
Antonescu, seeking an
man lived
armistice with
long enough to be able to play as himself in Hearts of Iron 4 when it released in 2016. Insane fact.
the Allies. Romania's earlier alliance with Germany aims to regain lost territories that were annexed by the Soviet Union in 1940. However, as the war's tide turned and with the Soviet army advancing in Romania, continuing the alliance with Germany seemed impractical.
Just makes
By
sense.
changing
They
sides,
saw the writing
Romania
on the walls. They saw how Germany was being attacked from all sides. It's like, well, might as well bail out of this.
aims to avoid complete devastation of the country and Soviet occupation. Even
It's a
after
pretty smart
August
move.
23, 1944, Romania fought against Germany. The country still entered under the Soviet sphere of influence and became a communist dictatorship until 1989.
It was going to become a communist dictatorship either way. At least they didn't get completely destroyed in that process. Romania, damn, the Germans are pretty good. Let's help them out. Also, Romania, damn, the Soviets are pretty good. Let's help them out. Again, please go subscribe to Knowledgia. I absolutely love these videos. There's so much to talk about. There's so much really material there. Big thanks to my patrons this month. I tried to kidnap Drew again, but he put me in his basement. Help. Drew's Argentinian Grandpa. I can't sleep
I'm back,
without
boys.
Drew's
Kansas,
voice.
Tyler,
Archaeology.
aPhatNarwhal,
Carmel,
Sarsath,
Pavlik, DaBeautiful-MEGAN-Underwood, Fredrik Tibblin,
JohnDenver,
KansasWasMentioned,
KingBearHaze,
Mgmluthegoat,
LuxembourgLover,
the sebby. If you hear this, I